Hi there, I'm recording another video of Visby. This week I haven't had time to do so much, but I did some more texture animation, just a super quick thing. So the cage, it's closed. I wanted just to add a way to show state. So if I steal the key, go to the cage and unlock the cage, you can see the cage is open and the bird is there. I'll drop the key for a while and steal the bird and then I walk away. So what I wanted to show is how I basically add these texture animation to animations. I did it like in a hard-coded way, but I have a system for basically processing animations that I thought I'd talk about. Okay, so first thing here, I'm loading meshes, that's the background and collision, and then I'm loading these animated meshes. There's a bunch of them. I mean, they are just sprites, so they're pretty simplistic. And a couple of these props, the cage and the key that's on the merchant. And then the way I import those path animations is basically a scene importer that I use. Basically uses FBX and finds those nodes. Okay, but the thing I wanted to mention and talk about today was my animation processors. So animation processor is something that it should have been used earlier, in my opinion. It was kind of hard-coded when animations were being imported into engines in the past. You would import an animation, do some animation compression on it, and you might clear out some nodes and might generate some sometimes some hard-coded joins just to help IK. So in Unreal, I don't know Unity, I haven't done too much. In Unreal you can basically do these, what are they called? Animation Modifiers, I believe. They basically run, I think when I was working on Unreal 4 last time, you had to basically run these modifiers manually, but I modified it so that it was run every time you imported an animation. It would actually also run them so that they would be up to date. Okay, so what I've done, like I load all these skeleton meshes and then I go and process them, and I create this processor that zeroes out motion on the X and Z axis for all the animations in each mesh, and then I add that processor and I run the processing on it. This is my generic case where I can basically reuse the same processor for any animation, and the way that processor works is super simple. It just takes an animation, finds the track that you want to modify. If you saw here, it's the first bone, and that's basically my root bone in these meshes. And it just goes through all the translation keys that I have in this animation. It takes the first key because I want to zero out the motion, but I don't want to zero out all the translation. So I'm basically just taking the translation, either the X translation of the first key and then the current key. So I kind of keep one axis of motion, in my particular case the XZ case. Take the first key here for X and current key for Y and the first key for Z. So I basically want to just retain the animation that's going upwards but not sideways or into the screen or whatever. But the thing that I did now, because I didn't have much time this week, it's a little bit, I feel like I have a lot of energy when I don't do too much creative work at work, and then when I've done a lot of creative stuff at work, then I feel like I don't have the energy to do more creative things for my hobby thing. But I thought I'd clean up stuff because I can always do clean up tasks in the background. So I created this new animation processor that creates material tracks, and I basically made it so you can create a diffuse track or a normal track, and that's basically the textures. So one example is the captain when he's moving up. Like I find the animation armature, move up, and I create a material track with just one keyframe, and that's just changing it to the back texture at frame 0, and I process the animation and I will basically add it So I do that for the normal as well. And then on the cage, the new thing that I added here, I have two idle animations. One where the cage is locked, and that's a different name. But when the cage isn't locked, it will use this particular animation. And then I add this open texture and open normal map, because everything that I do needs to have a normal map now. I also did it for the boy here. I can send in an array of these and 5 keyframes just to get the animation that I want. And the youth, which is the girl, yeah. So the animation process for adding this material track. So I have some hard-coded values in my shader. And also this thing, which I'm not super happy with right now, is just the texture sampler binding. I know when I import my meshes that it's only going to use 2 samplers, so I just want to use some of them that I know are free when I'm importing meshes, so I'm just using these unique values. If I add more types, I need to add them here as well. So the animation doesn't have any frames, I just skip it. This is just in case I make a mistake. And then I create material track. I go through the sent in frames. Here I find the texture if it's already been loaded, which it can actually do that, because the first frame in the animation is usually the one I've exported the mesh with, so it's already there. So I don't want to load it again and waste time. So the way my setup is, I basically have one file that is basically the parsing of a texture. I don't support many file formats. I support like TGA, and I think I have BMP, which is kind of why I call it bitmap. But TGA is what I usually use, which is a raw format. So I support 24 or 32 bits. And I add it to my resource library, and then I create a texture. I have the same name as the file that I loaded. I have some filtering that I usually set up for these that I want. Create the samplers and add the time key and the shader parameter key. And then I add the material track. It's pretty simple. There was one detail here, the track type. It changes the shader parameter type and the texture sampler index depending on which type it is. That's basically it. I was doing some drawing, trying to change the background, so I kind of done some pen and stencil tests. I'm not quite happy with it yet. I do want to replace this thing that I have, because I don't want to use some other a company's art for what I'm doing. I don't think I'm gonna sell anything, but I still don't want to use someone else's stuff. But yeah, that's it. I'll see you about next week. I don't know exactly what I want to do. There's a couple of ideas here, because I have basically there's a little bit of a stealth element to this. So I have an idea that you can go and hide inside any door. You just go inside there and hide for a little while if you're being chased. And there are some other small ideas that I have for changing outfits. That's it. Thanks. Bye.